All right, so we have the notes out there for everybody. We are still talking about the church and about community. So last week, we were really talking about kind of our need for community stemming from who God is as a Trinity, a unity in community. And so now we're going to talk about the church as the transformed community. That it is we're not just any community, okay? Because you can join the Rotary Club, you can join the Masons, you can join the International Order of Oddfellows, and you can find community there. You can find people to connect with, a shared interest. You can make friends. But the church is a very specific, transformed community because of the Holy Spirit working in us and through us. Individually, we are being transformed, and then all together, as our community, we're being transformed. So, just kind of a little bit of science about why this kind of thing is important. In our brains, there are certain neural pathways called mirror neurons. Okay, your neurons are your brain cells, and they're connected with each other, and they, through a series of chemical and electrical impulses, that's the physical matter part, where in my theory, that's where our spirits interact and control our bodies. Okay. Now, some of these cells are specially designed cells called mirror neurons, and through modern technology, we're able to actually hook up some devices to scan, and we see different parts of our brain light up and are active when we do certain things or think about certain things. And so when I do something intentionally, like pick up my phone, okay, that act of picking up my phone, there are certain muscles at play and parts of my brain that control those muscles to do that action. But those same neural pathways, whether I'm doing it or I'm watching someone do it, they light up just the same. Okay? So you watching somebody do something, it triggers the same neurons, the same brain pathways as though you were doing yourself, whether that's watching somebody eat, watching somebody ride a bicycle. Those parts of your brains, they activate because of the mirror neurons that trigger that activation, because your brain is mirroring what you're seeing. Now, within the brain, there's a principle at play that neurons that fire together wire together. In other words, neural pathways that activate over and over and over again become stronger, okay? Which is why, your Spanish class in high school, if you didn't use that very often, that stuff got pruned, right? You don't necessarily remember much from Spanish class. But, for example, we have Jeff over here, familiar with music and, practice playing the piano. It becomes this muscle memory that some things you can go back to even after years, and it's still there.
There's a thing that, like, next Saturday I'm going to be judging solos, and the point of it is, if you think your starting pitch, if you're thinking it, everything's there except releasing the air. You know,
Yeah.
and if you aren't thinking it, then the student that'll start like have a bad first note is because they didn't have everything accumulated together, you know, to release it. All, you know, like if you think it.
Yeah, it's all the
vocal cords
dominoes.
is there, everything's there, it's just release the air and let it go,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, so the brain is truly fascinating, but I want you to think about this. If, okay, mirror neurons exist, and so mentally we are rehearsing in our brains what we watch other people do, and those brains, those neurons firing off, harden and wire together, which means who we are watching affects the development and the wiring of our brain. That's why we tell our kids, you watch a bunch of violence, lo and behold, you start thinking violence, right? So the community, that's why you get a group of friends together and they are around each other quite often. The topics of conversation, you know, the stuff comes up and then character they start to influence each other and form each other. And the old saying, bad company does what? Corrupts good character. You are around people and they start to influence you. Now, as Christians, we want to be salt and light. We want to be an influence for others. Yet if we don't have a grounding in a community that influences us towards Jesus, it's going to be a big uphill battle. Okay? This is why what we're talking about, community is so important, because the community you keep is going to either help you develop spiritually or, well, you'll still be developing spiritually, just in the opposite direction. It can either transform you or malform you. I have a quote here from a book that I found very, very interesting, Why We Need the Church to Become More Like Jesus. So why do we need the larger community to help us become more like Jesus? As according to modern neuroscience, one of the ways I learned to be kind is to engage in close relationship with someone who is kind to me. When I experience kindness expressed towards me, my mirror neuron system is activated, and I begin to learn how to pick up the fork of kindness, so to speak. Then, as I proceed to exercise kindness in other social contexts, I increasingly reinforce pathways between neurons along this particular neural network, until kindness ultimately becomes a natural part of my life and character. So you want to learn how to be kind, you be around kind people, you witness, you watch as they model kindness, then you begin to exercise kindness until kindness becomes a muscle memory. And it's no longer okay, I know I should, but I kind of want to, okay, I'll do the right thing. It becomes natural to just slide into doing the right thing. Okay?
What if their motives are not the right thing?
The person you're watching, or the person, or you as you're.
No, I'm talking about the kind person.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly a possibility.
Very much so.
Yeah. Jesus says that you're going to know them by their fruits. The overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And that's what John was talking about in the sermon today about trust, is as you witness somebody, as you interact with them over time, you use your discernment and be able to navigate, okay, am I truly trust this person or not? With the understanding we're all flawed and human beings, we're all sinful, and we are going to, the world isn't divided between good and bad people. It's bad people and Jesus.
It seems like that the world can take you so far in like kindness, goodness, peace, and all those kind of things. And depending on the depth to which you're looking for those things, but only Jesus can take you past the point where you're willing to sacrifice.
Oh yeah.
Where it costs you to be kind, it costs you to love, it costs you to do those things, but like if we're not careful, we can look to people that have done it just by natural thing. And I've known some people as teachers who were definitely absolutely not Christians. They would tell you that, but yet they were some of the most helpful, responsible people in the school. I'm talking about parents outside who were willing to come in and help, were willing to do this and that, but they were working on their own power. Yeah. And that's a difficult thing then, because all of a sudden to the world that negates the power of Christ. And it's because, look, they're doing it and they don't.
Yeah, you're right. I don't need that. I can be good enough.
Yeah. Enough, that's the good word.
Where the Bible says there is no good enough. Your righteous deeds are as filthy rags.
Yes.
But what we're looking for, what we're aiming for, is what Paul told Timothy: follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. So we look for people who, to the best of our discernment, prayerfully with the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, are following the example of Christ. Now, that doesn't mean blind trust. It doesn't mean, it's not naivety. But we do know people in our lives that by their fruit, we can recognize them. And big, major reliance on the Holy Spirit, because, could somebody deceive me and pull the wool over my eyes? Absolutely. Can somebody deceive the Holy Spirit and pull the wool over his eyes? I don't believe so. So there's some things we step out in faith, trust in the Holy Spirit is going to give us the discernment or provide us warnings, help us see red flags before we tie ourselves to somebody who's unworthy of it. But that's the know, trust, rely, commit, and touch, which I think is a helpful model for us with discernment here. But the idea is the community of faith that we are part of. It's not just one person, but the people that we bring. We remember we had the circles here, and who is in your inner circles. The people who has the most access to our hearts. We want to be the kind of people who are going to help us become more like Jesus. And not to the exclusion of others, because we definitely want to be reaching out to others that we're discipling them and helping them become more like Jesus. But the community matters, is what I'm trying to say. The community matters. And it matters that the church as a whole act or be on a pathway to become more like Jesus. Because if we're going to influence each other, we're going to influence each other regardless. You're either influencing intentionally towards Jesus, or you're influencing unintentionally. But then there's some who are intentionally trying to influence away. And those are the wolves that the scripture warns us about. All right, Phil?
Just a comment, when that other person is apparently being kind and good, what is their motivation for being kind or good? And that's what's a mystery. Now, if you have the opportunity to say something Christian and you watch their eyes, then you know where they're coming from. Because they'll tell you if they're Christian or not. When you say something that's suggesting a Christian following. Now, of course, in the church, we kind of assume that the other person is Christ-oriented. Now, we both make mistakes, and that's where we forgive and help,
Yeah. Yeah, I think a big mark of what we're wanting to see in each other, okay? We've mentioned before the idea of fat people, faithful, available, teachable. We're thinking in terms of who am I going to disciple? Is it somebody who is available, or their schedule's so busy we can never get together? Well, maybe later on, or maybe you're not the right person. Teachable. Are they willing to listen? Are they open for correction? In the same way, faithful. Are they going to say, hey, I want to do this. Let's follow through with this. But a lot of this points to the idea of being humble. And I'm reading a book right now by Jim Putman and Chad Harrington, The Revolutionary Disciple. And it's all about humility. Now, Jim Putman, he's the one who did the real life discipleship, okay? And his story is that he was a wrestler, like heading towards the Olympics, that serious about wrestling. He ended up getting called into ministry, but he's still a coach of wrestling. And, wrestling is not really a sport for passive people, right? Jim Putman is definitely a type A go-getter, bold, courageous, stand on things. And yet he was telling this story, this encounter he had with the elders at his church, where he was wanting to do one thing and he was butting heads, and the eldership was like, we need to put some brakes on this and slow things down.
Never happens.
Yeah. I don't know what kind of messed up elder board that is. No.
You resemble that, right?
But what Putman talked about is that in that encounter, because he's trying I know this is the right thing to do, and fight his battle, but then somebody challenged him basically with the question of, who can tell you no? Who can put up a stop sign in front of you?
Wasn't that guy from India?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, he was on a mission trip to India and talking to a church pastor there. But basically the idea is for Jim was, am I going to humble myself and listen to the wisdom of the group? Or it's got to be my way? And, as a pastor, I can resonate with that. Because, you get a burr in your backside and think, oh, I've got the solution to everything, but you don't know everything. And you need to listen to wisdom and be able to submit humbly to others. So I think a huge fruit we want to see in the community, and it is are we humble enough to listen to each other? If you've got somebody with whom nobody can tell them no, They are never wrong. The problem is always everyone else. That's a toxic, sinful pride. Okay. Now that doesn't mean you're never assertive. You know, that's another thing we're talking about in the RAM series is, you know, assertive communication, saying, this is what I believe. We can assertively interact with one another, but the question is, are we asserting in an aggressive, it has to be my way, or are we assertive in a communal, here's my thoughts on things, what are your thoughts on things, is there a way to come together on things? So humility is a huge, important trait in community. Yeah.
One thing I learned in teaching, because there's never a budget enough. You know what I'm saying? Like I always envy people in industry sometimes where they could try something and they could afford for it to fail, try something else. Where in school, you know, you just had this amount of money, and if you failed, you were going to live with it for a number of years. So it wasn't aggressiveness or whatever, it was the fact that I didn't teach them what I needed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like I needed kind of to present my problem, and then a little bit later, present my problem again. And so all of a sudden where they came up to it, and then maybe a month or two or whatever later, or could be even a year, because of the budget cycle, you'd be like, you know what I was talking to you about last year about it? I think maybe I found something, do you think this would work? And then just back away from it, you know,
Yeah.
and let it go. So sometimes it's like an education
Oh, yeah.
type of thing,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
I guess would take humility, but I always sometimes felt a little guilty because it was calculating on my part. Did you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
But you're just trying to
Yeah.
educate and influence people to get something done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, Jesus was calculated. He wasn't just random in what he was doing. He was leading people from where they are to where they needed to be. Now, so the whole point here is in community, do we have the kind of humility that we can listen to the Holy Spirit speaking through other people? And with that, receive correction, receive wisdom, receive insight. You know, for someone else to come along and say, hey, Sam, you know, I saw it, you know, the conversation you were having there, you came off a little hurtful. Am I going to listen to that? Or, oh no, you don't understand. You don't. So are we able to hear from others?
So I find it, I just turned 70. So I find at my age, I'm looking at men that have built into my life that can talk to me about anything. And I'm willing to listen. Even in the middle of me talking to them about something else, they may respond totally differently. And so what I'm trying to say is, we as a community need to be looking for those people that we feel like that have godly wisdom, that are strong but gentle in sharing things with us. I know with Jim, his parents were a huge part of him even staying in the ministry, because they constantly encouraged him. Like when things really got rough, they said, you need to stay because they need you, and that you can learn as much from a poor manager as you can a good manager. And so his parents, even though they felt like they failed in a lot of ways, even though he was the lead pastor in a big church, and a lot of people listened to him, he was listening to his mom and dad, even though, you know, I'd say he was 40 and they were in their 60s.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's why he focuses on humility, is because he learned how to do that.
Yeah, and it is a huge thing, especially, that book, The Revolutionary Disciple, coming out so soon after the podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, which chronicles the ministry of Mark Driscoll, who, in some ways, a similar path as Putman, and yet, from everything I've heard, and granted, I don't know everything, but it comes across as though Mark Driscoll didn't have the humility to listen to anyone else.
And he didn't have the parents.
Right.
He didn't have godly parents. I think that is a huge part, nor did he have someone that filled the role as like an older brother or the favorite uncle or the favorite aunt.
Yeah.
I don't think he had those.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to justify what he's saying. I'm just saying that when you look at the resources that some people have to help them overcome their own shortcomings.
And that's why it is so important that the church be healthy. The community needs to be healthy. And we all contribute to the health or the dysfunction of the church. On page 189, the second page of the notes there, I had a older retired pastor, a friend of mine in Pennsylvania, John Barchi, recently passed. He told me he was at that stage of life where he was always checking the obituaries in the newspaper.
I forget that.
I've done that, yeah. See if I knew.
But he told me it's interesting. You see these obituaries, these life stories of people, and they'll talk about, oh, this person belonged to such and such church. And sometimes it would be our church, and we're like, oh, that's interesting. I've never met the person. I've been here 5 years. So that obituary linked that person's life, okay? It links that person's life with this particular church. And they could be the godliest, most wonderful person, and maybe they had moved away and didn't change their membership, but for whatever that connection, people are going to witness this person's life and then make inferences about the church. And if, let's say, this person, considered themselves part of the church, but left, years ago, and then lived a life of arrogance and selfishness and just brutality towards others. And people read that, they're going to say, wait, what kind of church is that? If that's the kind of person, in the same way, if you have somebody driving their car, they got a Jesus bumper sticker on their car, declaring to the world, hey, I'm a follower of Jesus, but then I cut people off, flip people off, get into an accident and pull my gun out and yelling at somebody with a road rage. I mean, what we do reflects on more than just us, which cuts against the grain of all of our American sensibilities. Other parts of the world, you have this more sense of obligation to the community, where it's like this honor shame mentality where what you do reflects on the entire family. You're either bringing honor to the family or you're bringing shame to the family. Where with us, it's like, well, everybody's on their own. You know, if you're the black sheep of the family, well, okay, it doesn't necessarily translate to your brothers and sisters, let alone your cousins, where in other cultures it would. And I'm not saying we ought to go to that extreme, but just to be aware that what we say, what we do reflects on the church and on Jesus. Matthew 5:13 through 16. Can somebody read that for us?
You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven.
All right. And then 1 Peter 2:9.
But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you might proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Well, these verses do, oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
That sounded almost biblical.
Especially the Texas part, right?
Yeah.
Y'all.
So the Bible doesn't necessarily speak about individual personal relationships with Jesus. It talks about the people of God, not the individuals of God. It talks about we are a chosen race. And I do have the thing from Texas there, you know, the you are salt of the earth, that is a plural you. So y'all are the salt of the earth is not an inaccurate translation.
Yeah.
All of us together. And that is one of the streams of American culture that our church has to fight against, is that individualism that says, okay, it's just you and your relationship with Jesus, just you and your relationship, it's just you and your relationship with Jesus. We know it's we're in this together. We are linked in some very powerful ways, yeah.
Which speaks to the issue of the obituary. When a person dies and they say that they're affiliated with a particular church, I think the people in the community where that church is located know that church as a whole. And individual people will make that connection when they read that obituary. That person maybe has affiliated with that church. That's not the church. That's
Well,
not the church I know.
Yeah, and you would hope so. You would hope so. But it's also how much responsibility do we as a church bear if a sheep does go astray, you know, just like a child. You have a child who grows up and maybe leaves the faith. Okay, that is their choice, but it's not a choice they made in a vacuum, right? So I say that just remember, we need to keep those connections and those ties in the church in front of us because we're not Lone Rangers. We're not solo. We are a people, and we do this together. And then, you know, John 13:34-35, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another. Just as I loved you, you also are to love one another. By this, all people will know you are my disciples if you have love for one another. In one of the early sermons of the Ram series, John Tischer used this quote from John Van Epp. You can have relationships without love, but you cannot have love without relationships. We cannot be faithful followers of Jesus without the community. Simply because we cannot practice all of his commands. If you this is a thing in the early church where men and women, they're called the desert fathers and mothers. They just left society and went out to the desert and lived in caves. And they did teach us a lot about spiritual warfare, fighting the temptations of the world and getting out, but they're also missing something important. Eventually they realized it became not just an individual off in a cave somewhere, but a community, kind of withdrawing from the world. You have the monasteries, we're going to withdraw from the temptations of the world, but we're going to withdraw in community. So in the Bible, we have a number of commands called the one another's. Now there's like 50 some odd times that the word one another is used, maybe more than that. But then all those times, there's these commands given. Now I have some of them. I actually had to pare down the list because there are so many. But think about, can we do any of these without being in community? Be at peace with one another. Live in harmony with one another. Welcome one another. Instruct one another, serve one another, bear one another's burdens. Be kind to one another, forgiving one another. Submit to one another. In humility, count one another more significant. Seek to do good to one another, encourage one another, confess your sins to one another, pray for one another, show hospitality to one another. Is there any one of those that you can do alone by yourself?
No. So what does that say to online church service?
Well, and that is a good point. And online church is a less than ideal form of church.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's better than no church. When we started doing online church here, the way I pictured, the way I thought about it is I was on the team kind of trying to get the initial, figure out what we were doing. I saw online church as a lifeline. Okay, so here's the boat. Okay. Now you have somebody here in the water. Something happened. Sometimes it's, we had family come in and then one of us was sick and then we had a trip to see family and then another one of us was sick. I mean, you could easily get to 4-5 weeks being away from church, just life, especially in the world of COVID. So because of life, they're starting to drift. They're starting to drift away from the community. They're starting to drift away from the boat. So what's their lifeline back? What's going to make it, okay, you got 4 maybe reasonable things. Maybe it's one of those things where the bug just runs through, like each weekend, one of us has it. So that when that 5 Sundays and that next Sunday comes up and there's no more excuses, what's going to get them to cross this distance back to the boat? Well, online church is like the lifeline because they aren't totally disconnected. They are totally, it's not like out of sight, out of mind. They've been engaged in a less than ideal fashion so that, okay, we've got our lifeline. Now we've got no excuses. Let's get back into the boat. Now, the downside of that is it can easily become I don't need the boat. I've got the lifeline here. I've got the little, whatever the donut thing is. I'll just float on this. And that's where, the challenge with online is how do you engage in that medium? How do you, and there's various churches trying different things. Through COVID, we were, as a staff, trying to be more active on, through Facebook, as people are watching at home, and we're like, hey, how you doing? Hey, how can we pray for you? There's one company actually put out a platform where you're watching the service, but you do it in a row with other people who you're also video face-to-face with, watching the service together. So it's like the top of the screen is the service, and then down here might be the Smith family and the Jones family, and Paul, the single guy there by himself, and then somebody else. And then you're interacting with them as you're watching, worshiping. And then after the service, they actually have a virtual lobby cafe where you can take a seat at a virtual table and talk and catch up to people there. Now you're like, okay, you do all that, why don't you just go to church? And it's just somebody trying to answer the question in the world we live in, because we don't want people coming to church with COVID. But we also want them to be disconnected because they have COVID. So it is a challenge.
It sounds like the pandemic has really made it difficult to assess the whole situation. That, because it's not just an excuse, because that's what you're, the line there.
Right.
But it gives a reason and.
Now, and I will say that as a staff, we are looking into ways to encourage people who may have, there may not really be there's some people, they're shut-ins, they legitimately can't. But there may be somebody who could, you just don't. We've got some stuff in the works for how to prod them. So I know Brian had hand up.
I think part of spiritual maturity is understanding we're not supposed to just attend church, we're supposed to be the church. And if we're not physically present because of our own choice, then we're not being the church. And if we're not connecting with people outside of a normal Sunday service, we're not
Yes.
being the church. And I think that is a huge paradigm shift for the church to be as strong as it needs to be, because some people just look for any reason not to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, and you also mentioned, if we're just here on Sunday morning, there's plenty of people who are, they're there, but they're not really here, right? Okay, slip in 5 minutes after service starts, slip out right before it ends. And I don't have to talk to anybody, I don't have to shake anybody's hand. Slip in, slip out. Okay. So just because we are physically present doesn't necessarily mean we're connected. So,
Isn't the virus and what we're dealing with as far as church, isn't that a test from God? You have to think about yourself. okay, I got this new technological thing, I don't have to go. You've proven yourself. Or I look for the safest, reasonably safest way to get back.
Yeah,
You've shown your colors.
yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It is a test. And it's a test of the heart, which means that we can't necessarily judge how well somebody passed or not the test because we don't know the heart motivations on what they choose to do. Because I know some that, okay, it's not so much they're afraid for themselves, but they're taking care of their elderly parents. Like, I don't want to be around, I don't want to put myself in situations where I could get it and then I could end up killing my parents, giving it to them. That's a heart motivation I can understand. Now, somebody who says that, but then goes to the movies, well, which,
Well, the test is not between me and you, the test is between you and God.
right,
Now, ultimately, it might, if you tend to be reckless, it might dawn on you. Hey, I haven't been what I thought I was.
mhm.
I guess, I don't know whether this is controversial or not, but who is the church for in reality? Like sometimes I think, is the church for its members to grow and to be, I guess like kind of like a school, I would think almost, to cause us to grow and to mature. Because I know at one time, because I was a musician and choir director, Janice and I attended more churches probably, than we should have. But one church that we attended for a while, the pastor was really good at evangelical revival kind of, not revival, but like to non-Christian type things, but there were no quote unquote non-Christians in the church. And so consequently, what was going on there wasn't applicable. It wasn't like the elders and the pastor got together and said, here are problems that we see in our church and we need to be addressing them. Whereas like the Great Commission was the only thing that mattered. Do you see what I'm saying? If you're doing that, then you're fulfilling all the obligations of the church, yet where the church people were in some respects kind of starving because all they were getting was like milk, the first steps of Christianity.
Yeah,
And so I'm wondering if, and I don't want to sound off the wall, but I pondered on this for a while.
Yeah.
If the church were more, I don't want to say, if the more involved in the growth and the sustaining of its membership, the membership would be strong enough to go out and, like the world's out there. And I almost sometimes think like, instead of the church, be it on TV or whatever, instead of making it attractive to the world, if we made our people attractive to the world, and then the world would be thinking, there's something there that I need. But when they come and they decide to be a part of our fellowship, they need to know that, like, when you're not here, you're going to get a phone call. And it's not that we're, what I want to say, being oppressive and looking out for where everybody is or whatever. It's because that's a part of who we are.
yeah. So with that, if you turn the page on the notes.
See, I tried to lead you into it.
No, it's a great segue. I love it. All right, Ephesians 4:15-16. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love.
Can I say one little thing, and then I won't talk anymore?
Very little, yeah.
Is the scripture that you said before, while you were just speaking, but it's a scripture in that follow my example seems to be one of the scarcities in the church body of people who are willing to say, follow my example. Do you
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying? So depth is an important part that I think sometimes we forget about as a church.
So this section, Ephesians 4, Paul's talking about the church. He talks about how Christ gave gifts to the church, pastors, apostles, prophets, pastors, evangelists, so to equip the church, to equip the body for ministry. Okay? So for a long time, the model of church has been, here's the pastor, okay, the preacher, the minister, whatever you want to call him, and he does ministry to the church. Okay, and this is a very inward focused model that the leadership of the church exists to care for, and that's not necessarily deepen them, challenge them, coach them, grow them spiritually, but to basically funerals and weddings, pastoral care for the church. But what Paul's talking about there is that Jesus gave the leadership, pastors, elders, to equip the church
For the acts of service.
to do ministry in the world. Okay? So, and in fact, I do this like this. It's actually upside down. It's servant leadership. You're not, I'm in charge. But the leaders equip the church to be Christ's presence in the world. We are variously called ambassadors. We are, the Peter scripture, chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his sight. So we all together are a priesthood. Priests represent or mediate between God and the people. Well, if the church is the priesthood, who are we representing God to? Well, to the world. Now, this, you're talking about, okay, who is the church for? This is that internal deepening part you were talking about. But it's not a coddling, it's not a, okay, just whatever's going to make us comfortable.
It's not Ingram.
Absolutely not. It is equipping, which, yeah, there's absolutely times you think about equipping, I think about coaching. There's times when a coach has to bandage up a player who got hurt, right? Has to tell a player, you need to go on the bench, you're exhausting yourself. There's absolutely that kind of pastoral shepherd care. But there's also a time for a coach to say, come on, let's go. Let's go deeper. Let's go further. Let's go harder than we have before. Here, we're going to run these drills. We're going to teach you these skills so you can play the game. So here's that internal piece, but then here's that external piece. That the church is going out into the world. And then the Great Commission, and this is where sometimes people kind of miss the mark here. The Great Commission is not just about evangelism. It's about discipleship.
Doesn't that what it says?
Yeah, but people still miss it. Because, okay, go to the world and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them. And so we're going to go to the unchurched, and we're going to preach the gospel to them, and they're going to hear the message, and they're going to get saved, And then, okay, but then I'm gonna go over here or preach the gospel to them and they're gonna get saved. And so we end up with a mile wide and an inch deep because we've got the next piece is teach them to obey everything I've commanded. Just getting them baptized without teaching them to obey, that's, yeah, you've evangelized, but you haven't discipled. That's one of the reasons I like the real life discipleship model, because, okay, you have the dead in trespasses and sins, and you evangelize, and then they become infants, and then teens, and then adults, and then parents. This is all discipleship. Who is the church for? It's to turn dead people into disciple makers. And it doesn't stop. You know, there's a phase here of outreach and witnessing and we gotta leave the premises and go out to where people are. Absolutely. But then there's this other phase of deepening their faith, helping them root in Christ, connect in community, engage in service, and invest in others. So it's not an event, it's a pathway of discipling people who then join the mission to go and who then join the mission and go. And that's what the church is for, to the glory of God.
And that balance, telling you that balance is important.
That balance
Oh,
is
you
really
you
important.
lost your time. Your 2 minutes are up.
All right, now
Well,
Now-
that's true. That is a good balance. It is important.
yeah.
I agree. It has to be. It has to be there.
And so it never stops. There's no arriving until Jesus returns and calls time.
Right.
And Maranatha comes quickly.
Um,
So the rest of the notes here, I basically have the sermon that I preached at the beginning of January, kind of breaking down Ephesians 4:15 through 16 about these different points and how spiritual growth happens in the community. The importance of truth, but it's truth in love, okay? Truth without love is brutality. Love without truth is sentimentality. We need both.
Does it just go to love?
There should be another page there. You flip it over.
Together?
Which one is?
No.
Which page are you missing a page? 191, that's what we're on right now.
Yeah,
Oh,
You can start.
yeah, there.
oh, together. What? Okay, at least you have it. All right,
Yeah, together is the last page, 192.
okay.
All right. Yes, Janice.
Yes.
Cheers, Jeff.
Yeah.
She has her 2 minutes now.
The truth is positive. It's always positive. But you can, I think, starve people spiritually by not telling them the truth. It's a package deal. I mean, it's truth and love.
And encouraging them.
Yes.
So you can, like you said, the truth without love is brutality, but the truth also has to be like, I see this in you, you can do this.
Right.
And that's a part that we don't.
Right, and that's unfortunately a lot of times the ones who are really truth, just got hit with the truth, they use that as an excuse to just say the nastiest, meanest things they can.
Absolutely.
It's like, the truth about our stance on marriage, that this is where health is, a one man, one woman. Okay, yes, that's true. But that truth doesn't give me a license to denigrate the people who are not living up to God's standards. Instead, it leads me to call them in a healthy way to where health is, you know?
Right.
So that's why I emphasize it, because it so often becomes an either or. Either I say the truth and I don't care how it affects people. Okay, well, your tone and word choice and everything, it does matter. Plus, the fact that truth isn't just an idea, it's a person. So are we really representing the truth if what we are saying might be factually accurate, and yet it's not representing the heart of Jesus?
This is me, this is not Jen. I have read a book probably a couple times, maybe 3 times, and loaned it to other people by Anne Graham Lotz, Billy Graham's daughter. And the name of the book is Wounded by God's People. And the name of the book is Wounded, and then the subtitle is By God's People. And I think there's a lot of that going on with people who are exactly what you're saying. They hit you with truth in such a hateful way that you lose the truth because of the manner in which it's presented.
Yeah.
And people are wounded.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, for the sake of time, we need to go here. So truth, love. Then Paul goes on in Ephesians 4:15-16, from which the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped. This idea of joined and held together, as we were talking about, as Jeff had mentioned, you know, if a part of your body decides it wants to give up and stop working, the rest of your physical body is affected. In the same way, if somebody says, all right, I'm out of here, it affects the church. It affects everyone else. Whether or not we're healthy. Okay, maybe you're here, but you're toxic and are not growing spiritually. Well, that affects everyone else. So there is a connection between us. And that's where I use the mosaic illustration in that sermon, that you have all these broken stones, but when fitted together, and each one in their place can create the picture of Jesus. But if those stones, if you didn't take a hammer to that picture and break away stones or chip some of them off, it's going to affect how well the church images Jesus. And then the last part there is when each part is working properly, okay, when each part is doing its job. So you think about a body, okay, my foot can't do what my heart can do. I don't need my foot to be my heart, I need my foot to be my foot. In the same way, we all have ways to serve, whether serving within the church or representing the church in the world. We want to find our place and do our part. Okay. So that's community. Next week, we're going to talk about the community in worship. And what does worship mean in the church? Why is the corporate gathering together so important? And that's it. All right. Let me see.